And welcome to another webcast from the Digicon Fringe Festival. And we're lucky today to have Gary Bass here.
Award-winning Gary Bass.
Yes. Gary is the ICT Educator of the Year. And I think it's really lucky for us to have you here to talk about kicking up some steam. Now, you've been a big advocate with what we would now call STEM for many decades. And it's not a new term, is it?
Not at all. In fact, it's more a funding term that's used in Canberra than it is something that's relevant to teachers in classrooms. And I'd like to focus on the idea of STEM principles rather than STEM subjects. And that's far more inclusive of everybody in school that's interested rather than exclusive of people being able to capture resources.
You mean it's not just about science, technology, engineering, arts, maths, or a new subject?
Well, it is about all those things, but find a history subject or a social subject or geography or music or woodwork that does not use mathematics and science. So fabrics and food are as much a material as wood, plastic or metal. So
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I've heard stream, where we can include perhaps religious studies, and I've heard string. I can't remember what was bundled in with that.
Well, my view is if you want to be in it, get on board, and it's about STEM principles, as in identify a need, come up with a plan, design a solution, build it, and the key part is build it, then test it, and then review it. Does it fulfill the need? So it's a design cycle rather than, hey, I've done some coding with a computer and it's STEM.
Therefore it's
well,
STEM.
What did you build? What solution did it provide? How did it make the human existence better than it was?
So it's greater than the mathematical thing or mathematics principle you might be teaching, or the materials science, physics. It's that technology cycle of design, development, experiment, tinkering, making.
That's the focus, that it's about making use of applied technology. So the whole point of STEM in schools, in my view, is about applied technology, so that meanwhile over in music, you can actually build some sort of product, and it uses as much mathematics and science, because the physics of hearing is fundamental to music.
Gary, something that I've always been in awe of is the way that you couple it with real world experiences. You did something at the Lunar Park with physics students.
Oh, absolutely. That was an initiative over 10 years ago now, whereby we could talk about roller coaster rides and do any number of problems about roller coaster rides and have exam questions about roller coaster rides. But unless you actually were on a roller coaster to feel the forces, it was completely irrelevant. And students were confusing where the forces were. Is the force up? Is the force down? Which is the exam question. Here's the diagram, indicate where the force is going. Well, once you've had a roller coaster ride, it's not a question. You know the answer. You understand and you know it. And so it's a matter of changing the data into information, the information into wisdom, which too often we just focus on data. And maybe we get the information, we never do analysis. If we're talking about lower order activity, pretty much that's all we do at school. And the higher order happens with very popular because the students feel involved. Yep. They get a real solution. They get a sense of achievement because they've actually done some of STEM principles. Then it's better for everybody. And the hard part is how to assess it. How do you assess it and how do you report it? We'll just have a test. So here's the worksheet. Well, the challenge is to come up with a better rubric that will assess and reflect what's been done, the student achievement. So not only is it student achievement, but it's student progress. So where did the child begin, or the learner begin, because it can apply to teachers as much as they can to students. Where did they begin? Where are they now? Where do they want to go? And so if you take that approach, it's lifelong learning. It's all the glib, fashionable catchphrases we've had over the last 5 or 10 years. But if that's what it takes to get people on board, then let's have fashion. Let's get people on board and let's get on with it.
I guess I'm lucky. I teach at the Mater Christi College in Belgrave, and they have the International Baccalaureate. It's an inquiry-based learning, so project-based learning, problem-based learning. You must have seen some examples of schools that have been doing some good things with STEM, like Aaron, perhaps. Could you talk about the STEM principles? And
it is what it is, and it's where you find it. So quite often people don't get out much. Here today at this conference at DigiCon, there's a lot of people, and quite often the people in the audience know as much, quite often more, than the person presenting who's been prepared to put forward and stand up and step forward. And quite often people back in school can't get out and they don't talk to anyone. And they're doing some great things. So it is what it is, and you find it where it is. So I'm constantly amazed at the number of good things going on in schools, but you just don't hear about it.
Where is it that we've fallen down with communicating to schools what STEM is about? As you said, it's a funding catchphrase often to gain.
And schooling is on about getting credentials, and quite often the school's reputation rides on past performance of students as it's measured. And at the early, and it's really a matter of which one is a priority by each school. So as a teacher, as a job, good luck, because it's so difficult. And in the end, you are supportive infrastructure at your school to do that, then you've got a great school. Whatever you choose, whatever your priority, which comes first, well, that's where the good leadership comes in. If you've got great leadership in a place, it's not a problem. You can get assistance and advice and listen to these podcasts and all of that.
Gary, I'm wondering if a school was trying to get a vision as to what the makerspace environment, or what sort of it?
Well, to me, it's all about resourcing in the school, which every school had a library, which was the resource centre. No particular subject area owned the facilities. To me, if you're getting a laser cutter, if you're getting a 3D printer, if it goes in the library, it hasn't been captured, it's not locked away, you'll have a technician on call all the time to make sure it's working and looked after. Ordering of materials. So to me, the logical extension is that the library becomes or continues to be the resource centre, and call it a maker space, call it a whatever you like, but it makes a lot of sense to put a lot more of the science equipment in the library.
Do you think that there's still a place for kids to have tables they can bang on, glue on, wash on, spray on, fix, build, hang, model?
Well, some schools have set up open learning areas which incorporate that, so they don't have to go to a specialised place to do that. So the days are long gone when you have a computer room. Although if you read some articles, some schools still offer computer room learning of computer sciences. Well, okay, but that's good for 10 years ago. In 10 years' time, you cannot expect that to continue. So again, every community, every school has different expectations. They certainly have different budgets. And it's really just a matter of living within your means, and probably crowdsourcing if you want a laser cutter, which I'd suggest you get ahead of a 3D printer, because they're far more creative and require some planning and building, whereas a 3D printer just gives you a blob of plastic which you can look at.
How do we get students involved in that narrative? Because it's not just about teachers designing.
To opening up. So it's all about control. Quite often worksheets are a way of exerting classroom and appreciated.
Oh, but hang on, schools like to have the, week 3 we do levers, and then week 4 we
Well, if you
do...
go to New South Wales, we've got a syllabus issued to them and they're told. So in Victoria, we haven't had that ever. We've got too many served in Victoria. We've got world leaders here, and yet we insist on buying people from other countries. And so it's second-hand knowledge is something I better serve than first-hand. So it's an education for people, so you just got to get used to the salespeople.
So maybe teachers need to get out there a bit more, find out what in terms of the project kind of.
And look at some of the different maker learning spaces at different schools and sharing some of the stories,
sure.
And perhaps stop trying to bash it into
Well,
one particular domain or another.
There's no one size fits all. Everywhere is different. And diversity, I would argue, is a good thing. There's no right answer. There are some more popular than others. But without mentioning brands of makerspace, there seems to be a company that has cornered the market on providing the approved makerspace, and they come in and install it, which is good for them. But bear in mind, it's a product, and
and that's not the end point. It's all about what you
Absolutely.
do and create, and the
Absolutely.
questions you ask students, and
cardboard and string still, and a few old CDs still produces some good learning.
yeah.
And if that's all you've got, then that's what you use.
Thank you.
If you've got clever electronics, well, maybe that hides too much. Maybe there's too many black boxes there. And unless your students are up to it, it just depends on their stage of development. So there's some brilliant low-cost electronics available if that's what you want to do. But equally, there's some brilliant unplugged STEM principled activities where you're making cakes and building cakes. So,
or wearable technology where you're sewing LEDs into clothing, or perhaps even
Absolutely.
programming prosthetic devices and hands for students. And
so it comes down to what is the teacher interested in, what are the students interested in, what support is there in their immediate community, because quite often in the parent body, there is huge expertise. And quite often they're just asking for an invitation. And they're very generous with their time once the invitation is issued. And it's really a matter of, well, how best to use the expertise in your own community. And if you haven't got it in your own community, then there's all these lend a scientist programs or lend an engineer programs that you can actually negotiate to get access to these people.
Well, it's been wonderful hearing you speak. I can see why they granted you the award. You're articulate, you understand very intimately the way that students learn and how teachers can drive real change for STEM-related careers. And we may not have called it STEM those many years ago, but
I think that's what we're doing.
that's what we're doing. That's what we've been doing well.
Okay,
Or,
thank you.
Or really real-life learning.
Well, it's applied learning, absolutely.
Science is everywhere, tech is everywhere,
Science,
engineering,
tech,
maths.
you don't classify Leonardo da Vinci as just an artist or
Yeah.
just as a mathematician or just as a scientist. And he'd be like my first example of a STEM leader. And we don't need to look
A
at
Renaissance person, perhaps. We should all,
Thank you.
all seek to emulate.
A new technology renaissance. Thank you very much, Gary.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, everyone. Bye.
Thanks for your time.